sound of scratching on the walls, as if invisible fingers were tracing patterns in the darkness. Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I haven't really introduced myself in my previous videos. Welcome to ASMR Lunar Rainbow. You can call me Luna. Thank you for being here and choosing my channel as your destination. Your presence means the world to me, and I couldn't be more grateful for your choice. So I have been making various ASMR videos on this channel, and as Halloween draws near, I wanted to try something different. So I love all things eerie and mysterious. So tonight I've got something special in store. 4 spine-tingling stories of the supernatural and the unexplained. I hope you find them as thrilling as I do. And if you enjoy this type of ASMR experience, please let me know in the comments, because as much as I love ASMR and horror, this is totally new for me. And especially ASMR combined with horror. It's a very new idea for me that I'm trying out. So I hope you enjoy. Get cozy and comfortable. Grab your blanket, a drink or a snack, and get ready for some spine-tingling stories. So without further ado, let's get on with story number 1. Okay. Story number 1. My wife, yet not quite her. On an ordinary evening, with the cozy familiarity of our home wrapping around us like a security blanket, an unsettling event unfolded that would forever haunt our lives. My wife engrossed in her book in the living room, and I settled into my favorite chair, had no inkling of the looming darkness. The soft glow of lamps cast warm pools of light in the living room, and the TV murmured softly in the background, filling the air with a sense of calm. A peaceful night, just like countless others, or so it seemed. As I gazed out of the window into the moonlit night, a subtle movement in the backyard caught my attention. It was an indistinct figure, half hidden in the darkness, its presence casting a disconcerting aura. I called out to my wife, attempting to draw attention to this unexpected visitor, but she remained engrossed in her book, seemingly oblivious to my concerns. The air in the room suddenly grew frigid, and an unexplainable dread crept over me. Despite the warm, inviting interior, an unsettling cold enveloped my body. Unable to shake the growing unease, I stepped away from the window, feeling that something sinister was at play. My heart raced as I watched the figure outside raise a hand and make an eerie, beckoning gesture towards me. Panic welled up inside me, and I decided to confront this unwelcome presence in our backyard. It was as though I was drawn to it, pulled by an unyielding force. a sinister laughter. As I continued to call out for her, my wife slowly closed her book and looked at me with vacant eyes, a sinister smile playing on her lips. It was as if she were possessed by the entity that had infiltrated our home. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was no longer hers. It was a sinister, echoing whisper filled with malice. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that the entity had taken control of my wife's body. I was trapped in the house with a malevolent force that had assumed her form, and I had no means to protect myself or expel the intruder. My heart filled with dread as I faced a chilling, nightmarish ordeal that would forever alter the course of our lives. The entity used my wife's voice to taunt me relentlessly, with each word dripping with malevolence. Its taunts were like a venomous dagger, penetrating the very core of my being. The sinister whispers echoed through the darkened house, growing more disturbing with each passing moment. It mocked my deepest fears and insecurities, bringing up painful memories from my past. The entity seemed to have access to my innermost thoughts, using them to fuel its cruel jeers. It questioned my sanity, my grip on reality, and the strength of my love for my wife. The torment was unrelenting, and I felt as though I was slowly being driven to the brink of madness. As the night wore on, the entity's taunts took on a more personal, insidious tone. It began to mimic the voices of loved ones who had long passed, whispering their names in the shadows. I heard the voices of my parents, my childhood friends, and even my beloved grandparents, all distorted and twisted into nightmarish echoes of the past. The entity's ability to imitate the voices of those I held dear left me paralyzed with fear and sorrow. It was as though the specter of the night was tearing apart the very fabric of my reality, blurring the lines between the living and the dead. I was trapped in a twisted, otherworldly nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Hour after hour, I endured the relentless psychological assault, my spirit eroded by the entity's ceaseless torment, my wife's vacant eyes still echoing with the malevolent force that had overtaken her, served as a chilling reminder of the sinister presence that had turned our home into a living nightmare. By the time the first rays of dawn broke through the windows, my wife's form had returned to normal. She had no recollection of the malevolent entity that had taken her over, and the sinister presence had vanished as mysteriously as it had arrived. I was left emotionally shattered, forever scarred by the harrowing experience that had intruded upon our lives in a single nightmarish night. Oh my god, you guys. I actually don't know what I will do if this were me. What do you think? It's kind of difficult to look at your husband or wife the same way after such a scary experience. At least for me. the same way after such a scary experience, or just like at the back of your mind, you're thinking, when is this going to happen again? I don't know. Moving on. Okay, story number 2. The Haunting of Greystone Asylum. In the remote countryside of England, there was a spooky old asylum. It was a place with a scary history where people had once suffered terribly, and it had a reputation for being haunted. It was said that the ghost of those who had suffered there still roamed its dark hallways, their sad cries echoing in the night. I was always curious about mysteries and things that can't be easily explained, so I decided to explore this eerie place. One evening, armed with just a flashlight and a camera, I stepped into this creepy adventure, not knowing the scary encounter that awaited me. The moment I walked into the asylum, it was incredibly quiet. It felt like the walls held their breath, as if they were hiding the secrets of the past. The walls were covered in old graffiti, reminders of people who had been desperate and lost in this scary place. As I moved deeper into the asylum's dark, twisty hallways, the light from my flashlight made weird, elongated shadows on the crumbling walls. It was a world of silence and fear, where the past mixed with the present. Then I started hearing something, the faint sounds of voices, like people crying in pain. The voices were distant but clear, filled with sadness and despair. They seemed to be calling me. Like a sad song that I had to follow deeper into the asylum. The air suddenly got very cold, and it felt like I was surrounded by an icy breeze. It was a strange kind of cold, like it didn't belong in this place. Despite the fear, I couldn't turn back. It was as if something invisible was pushing me forward. I turned a corner and walked into a room that was unlike any other in the asylum. The walls were covered in creepy symbols and strange drawings, like something out of a nightmare. The room had a strange energy, and I could feel that something was there with me, even though I couldn't see it. As I shone my flashlight around the room, the symbols on the walls seemed to move like they were alive. The room itself felt like it had a mind of its own, like it was waiting for something. The fear was overwhelming. I ran out of the asylum as fast as I could, my heart racing and my mind filled with horror. The voices, the symbols, and the strange presence in that room haunted my nightmares. It was a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left scary to uncover. The asylum, hidden in the English countryside, remains a place of haunting beauty and unimaginable horrors, a reminder that there are things in this world that we can't fully understand, and some secrets are best left untouched. I agree. As much as I love horror and dark mysteries, I would never venture out into a haunted asylum on my own, or even with people. No, it's way too scary for me. I hope you're enjoying the story so far. We'll now move on to the third story. Story number 3, The Midnight Visitor. Encounter with the Mysterious Old Man. I will never forget those strange nights when I first met the old man. It was a chilly, dark winter evening, and I had just moved into an old, eerie house on the edge of town. The house had an odd, unsettling atmosphere. Before I moved in, people in the neighborhood had told me stories about the house being mysterious. They said an old man used to live there, but had disappeared years ago. Some thought his ghost still visited the place at night, looking for something. One cold night, I woke up feeling uneasy. The room was softly lit with a bluish glow, and the air was so cold I could see my breath. I heard peculiar sounds and whispers echoing in the hallway. I couldn't stay in bed, so I quietly walked out of my room, trying not to make the creaky floorboards creak any louder. The sounds led me to a shadowy figure at the end of the hall. It was the old man, dressed in old clothes, his white hair barely hanging on. His eyes looked empty but sad. The old man motioned for me to follow him, his bony long fingers pointing into the dark. He whispered, "Come with me. That's something you need to see." I was very scared but couldn't resist his gaze, so I followed him, my heart pounding, through the dark hallways. He stopped in a dusty attic filled with old things covered in cobwebs. There was a mirror on the wall. The old man pointed at the mirror and said, "Look into it and tell me what you see." I looked and I didn't see my own reflection. Instead, I saw the old man when he was alive, happy with his family. But he was looking at something I couldn't see, something that made him very sad. With a heavy heart, the old man said, "I lost my family and happiness. I've been wandering here for ages, searching for what I've lost. Maybe you can help me find it and set me free." The room got even colder, and the old man started to fade away, like smoke disappearing the old man. I was determined to help him find peace. I spent hours researching his family's history, trying to uncover any information that might lead to their resting place. One night, as I was deep in my research, the old man appeared before me. He seemed more transparent than ever, as though he was fading away faster. He told me that he felt his time was running out, and he needed to find his family's graves to finally be at rest. With the information I had gathered, we embarked on a journey together. We explored the town's archives, visited the local cemetery, and after days of searching, we finally found the resting place of his family. As the old man stood by their graves, tears filled his ghostly eyes. He thanked me for my help, and with a smile of gratitude, he slowly faded away, disappearing. I knew he had found the peace he had been searching for all those years. From that day on, the house lost its eerie vibe, and I felt a sense of closure. The old man's spirit had moved on, and his visits ceased. The past was no longer haunting the present, and I had played a part in setting her tormented soul free. I think this was more sad than scary. I don't know. Let's move on to the last story. The Secrets of the Haunted House. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, there stood an old, looming house that had gained a sinister reputation over the years. The legends told of the house being haunted, and it had been the source of spine-tingling stories passed down through generations. Most residents of the town had steered clear of the place, but not the Harrison family, who were known for their adventurous spirit. The Harrisons consisted of Sarah and John, along with their two fearless children, Emily and Daniel. When they moved into the house, they did so with skepticism, refusing to believe the terrifying tales about their new home. They were convinced that the stories were nothing more than local superstitions. The first few weeks in the house passed without incident. The family found it easy to dismiss the eerie rumors. But that would soon change. One fateful night, Emily, who was 10 years old, awoke to the faint sound of a lullaby coming from the hallway. She slipped out of bed and followed the haunting melody to the corridor. There she saw a figure, a child, not much older than herself, dressed in antique clothing and swaying to the ghostly tune. The ghostly child's face was pale, and its eyes held a haunted, forlorn look. Frightened but curious, Emily watched as the apparition vanished into thin air. She hurried back to her room and woke her parents, explaining what she had seen. Sarah and John were skeptical, but Emily's calling Lucy continued to visit the family at night. She would stand by the bedside, her body glowing eerily, humming her ghostly lullaby. The children felt a strange, chilling connection with her presence, while the parents remained wary. Lucy's appearances grew more unsettling. At times, the family could hear the eerie sound of scratching on the walls, as if invisible fingers were tracing patterns in the darkness. The cries and whispers in the night haunted their dreams, chilling their souls with their mournful tones. The Harrisons tried to escape these hauntings, but its malevolent grip only tightened. The doors sometimes wouldn't open, and the windows slammed shut. They were trapped. Their only company, the relentless ghostly presence of Lucy. As days turned to weeks, the family's physical and mental health worsened. Sleep deprived and tormented, they began to experience vivid nightmares, each one more disturbing than the last. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision, and the very walls of the house seemed to close in on them. The Harrison children's once fearless spirit was shattered, replacing by a paralyzing terror. The scratching on the walls grew more frantic, echoing their torment they now felt. Lucy's presence was no longer intriguing, but a relentless, sinister force that refused to release its grip on them. One night, as the family huddled together in their darkened living room, Lucy's ghostly form materialized before them. Her voice, once melancholic, was now a sinister, chilling laughter that sent shivers down their spines. The Harrison family had become prisoners in their own home, trapped with a malevolent entity that had no intention of letting them go. The once ordinary house had transformed into a nightmarish labyrinth of dread and despair, and there seemed to be no escape from its chilling, ghostly clutches. The Harrison family decided that they could no longer dwell in that house, for the memory of their terrifying ordeal was too great to bear. They had no choice but to put the house up for sale, leaving behind the malevolent entity that had tormented them and the chilling nightmares it had brought to life. I would have run out of the house the next day. Okay guys, that wraps our spooky journey tonight. I hope you enjoyed them as much as I did. If you got a favorite or any spooky suggestions for the next video, or even a chilling story of your own, please feel free to share it in the comments below, or you can even send it to me via email. I will leave my email in the description box. I would love to hear your suggestions